This boiling the frog parable, it's an old parable, and the first video I'll show you will explain to you what it is, was an article written by one of the Cradle's writers, and it was actually called How Iranians Boil a Frog. But the reel we made on our podcast about this story went viral. And I guess it's the purpose of parables, to explain complex situations much more easily. And I think everybody understood that in the circumstance Israel finds itself in today, it is slowly and incrementally losing its institutions, losing its narratives in all areas. So it was something that went viral because it made sense, and people could suddenly understand from an article called How Iranians Boil a Frog why the strategy of slow incremental hits at Israel over an extended, protracted period of time could be more successful than a short, hard war, which is kind of how the Israeli-Arab wars of the past have been fought, with no significant gains for the Arab side. So although the article was about Iranians boiling a frog, you will see how this plays across all parts of the resistance axis, from Lebanon to Iran to the Palestinian resistance to the Iraqi resistance factions to Yemen's Ansarullah, etc. Israel is heading towards a breakdown of the state. This is across all sectors: political, military, economic, and societal. We started seeing signs of this before October 7th, okay, with the big judicial reform protests. Many Israeli Jews talking about leaving the country, that this was now in a liberal state with the most extremist coalition government in the history of the state. But October 7th events exacerbated it and accelerated it. Furthermore, this breakdown is, here's the thing. So these fragmentations are happening across these sectors, but also institutionally and foundationally. But important is that during these disruptions of the state and its governing bodies are unable to form and create urgently needed corrections, okay? There's no Band-Aid solutions for these. These are foundational changes that need to be made. The breakdown is also happening during a time of war on 5 different fronts. It's very hard to govern during war in general, but not when you're engaged on every one of your borders. And importantly, it's happening during a time of international political disorder globally, okay? And that's happening because we're moving from a unipolar world to, I want to say, a bipolar world, in the sense that since the Cold War, we haven't had 2 poles. And now we have a second pole emerging to challenge the unipolar world. And then beyond that, a multipolar order. So I hope everybody understands that part, because Israel is not just waging a war, it is fundamentally also affected by the geopolitics, not just in the region, but globally. The comfort it had before during a unipolar world no longer exists, and I will show you why. Now, boiling a frog undetected is a process. It takes time. It's also a full spectrum war. So information, narratives, psychological, military, economic, societal, cyber. But you first have to understand the enemy, which is, I think, something that the resistance axis really has done very well, because the resistance axis is very strategic thinker. I would say this is something that is permeated to most of its parts. In order to understand the enemy, you have to know what its foundational vulnerabilities are and its foundational strengths. I posit that Israel, or the frog in this case, stands only on 2 legs, okay? There's only 2 things holding Israel up. One is its myths and its fairy tales. Everything from, perpetual victimhood, right? the Holocaust, therefore we were entitled to something, to this was a swamp and we made it a garden, to we are the only democracy in West Asia. We are the only country in West Asia that shares values with the unipolar world. The myths and the fairy tales are just astounding. They absolutely shape not just the narrative what Israel is, but what its enemies are. They're savages. They're brutal. They're violent. They surround us. They just want to kill Jews, you know, and on and on and on. But and this is what's helped people excuse Israel all along. You know, you cannot touch the Holocaust industry. You cannot make a dent in it. The second leg that this frog stands on is Jews moving to Israel. Without Jews moving to Israel, there is no Jewish state. There is no political Zionism, period. Both of Israel's legs have been fractured badly since October 7th. Jews are leaving the state in greater numbers than before. Israel is considered a pariah state by many, and getting there. We have had ICJ and ICC rulings, or, you know, on Israel since October 7th. This is kind of astounding. You know, the ICC or ICJ is reserved for African leaders and Vladimir Putin, not for Israel, you know. So why would Israel's enemies take on a state with a full-on military reprisal? Is this a possibility? Okay, because I'm positing that boiling the frog is the only possibility, and it will necessarily end the state. Okay, you can't. There's no in between unless the war was stopped in the first month of Gaza. They could have done that. They didn't. Now it is an existential war for Israel. Why did the resistance axis not attack Israel full on with all its new missiles and secret tactics and stuff that have been developed since 2006 and whatnot? The reason is because any war against Israel from multiple fronts at the same time would have absolutely galvanized Israel's Western allies with their infinite military arsenals. They would have come full on and participate in the war to ensure Israel wins. It would have galvanized all Israelis behind their government because since the time of David Ben-Gurion, the Israeli military the state has had one military strategy, and it is short, fast, hard wars. And then an interim period of a few years or longer even where you have peace, where you can create the semblance of peace, a different reality, where you can restock, you know, your munitions, where you can, you know, you can lift the morale of people. We won, we're stronger than ever, right? They need this. They need quick, short wars, and then a period of years in which to breathe.
آنچه در مورد ما میگویند